Winter has been here for about a week now, and ironically, we're actually 3% closer to the sun than we are in July. If the sun had ever seemed a little bit brighter in the wintertime, it may not just be the clear polar air. Closest approach, or perihelion, takes place on the morning of January the 4th. Anyway, good evening, and I'm glad to have you all here once again for another episode of Forecast Lab. There's our current surface analysis, and I do apologize if this is a little bit messy. I tried to add a little bit more data to the analysis, but what we see here is a weather system moving into the Midwest and the Southeast U.S. The triple point located in Mississippi. In the wintertime, that can be a very favorable area for severe weather. Do we have anything like that today? Doesn't really look like that. The tornado risk very low. The main hazard is just going to be wind and maybe an isolated tornado here or there. But as we go into tomorrow, the severe weather chances do pick up. Slight risk from Tyler, College Station down to Houston, and we pick up an enhanced risk in Mississippi and Louisiana. And here we could see some tornado potential extending from about Alexandria to Jackson and up towards Columbus. And the day 3 outlook pushes this slight risk into the Carolinas and Georgia. So some continued severe weather chances through the weekend. So what exactly is going on? Let's go up to 500 millibars. This is at about 18,000 feet above sea level. And this is our area of upper level energy. That's going to be a shortwave and jet max. The jet max itself, indicated by this 80 knot band, stretching from northern Nevada into New Mexico, and the favorable left front quadrant associated with enhanced vertical motion across the Four Corners area. So this is where we're at right now. We go into the overnight hours. This jet max rapidly moves into Texas, and maybe a little bit of deepening on this trough right here early tomorrow morning. So that will get the storms going. It's not directly triggering the storms. However, it's providing a very favorable destabilizing action on the air mass, and we do have moisture available. We've been bringing that north with the enhanced southerly flow, and this trough will gradually move into Louisiana during the afternoon. That favorable area of lift moving across the Mississippi River Valley towards evening, and then overnight out across Mississippi and Alabama. So there is an element of diurnal timing with the maximum heating. So we'll check out the surface chart, and I guess we can do that now, actually. And this is where we're at right now. This is that system trying to come together at the surface. This is the outgoing wave. And we're going to see this action come together here later tonight and tomorrow. And there's our frontal system coming together in Texas during the day, the triple point located around Lufkin around midday, and moving into the Mississippi River Valley towards evening. So a lot of favorable conditions coming together in that part of the country, and you can see it lifting to the northeast as this mature surface system. We can take a look at pivotal weather here, starting out at the current time. The Gulf is open and plenty of high theta E air offshore. So we go through the overnight hours, and eventually we do start bringing up that moisture. Really surges northward during the day tomorrow. There's that higher theta E, and if we take a look at the parcels, this is going to be about midday. We should see things starting to come together nicely. Steep lapse rates and not much capping, so that is going to favor lines and clusters of thunderstorms. If we had a little bit of capping there, that might be more of a problem for severe weather. Plenty of shear in the 0 through 1 kilometer layer, and going into the rest of the evening, that moisture continues moving northward, some mixing out late in the day, but still, that's going to be a favorable wedge of tropical air. So there's our sounding right there. Plenty of instability, not much capping, and a vast amount of low-level shear. So wherever we can get some isolated storms coming together, that will favor supercell production. You can see that the significant tornado parameter is not really elevated, but it is supportive of low-end tornadic storms. Some of that favorable shear is going to come from the low-level jet. So we go up to 850 millibars. This is the outgoing wave carrying 40 to 50 knot flow. That moves up into the northeast U.S., and you can see the new one coming together right there overnight and into tomorrow. So by 1 p.m., it is somewhat veered, but we're picking up 40 knots across Louisiana and then establishing itself over the Mississippi River, 50 knots by evening out of the southwest and increasing to 60 knots across Tennessee. So some of this activity could extend into the evening hours, although with that lack of capping, that will probably produce numerous lines and clusters. So maybe not a widespread severe weather event, but certainly wherever there's breaks or isolated cells, there could be problems. So here's the HRW forecast. This will give us a general idea of the morphology of these storms. In the overnight hours, weaker showers and thunderstorms across Alabama and Georgia. And then tomorrow, this can be about 9 a.m. and then noon. Clusters of storms developing in Louisiana, propagating into Mississippi and Alabama. And you can see that it does form a pretty solid line right there from Huntsville all the way down towards Macomb. So this is about 4 p.m., 6 p.m., and just wherever there's a break, that is going to be a favorable location. That shear will definitely help things out. But typically, unless there's an excessive amount of instability in these kinds of situations, the severe weather coverage tends to be somewhat limited. There's the high-resolution rapid refresh, not quite as accurate, but looks like it's pretty much on the same wavelength. And let's take a look at that environment out there, see if that instability is high, and it is kind of limited there. The mixed layer method, about 1,000. So I mean, it's not bad instability, but it's not particularly impressive either. These systems do evolve very rapidly, and some of the ingredients come together at the last minute. I would not be surprised to wake up tomorrow morning and see a moderate risk. That's how quickly things can change. So if you live in that part of the country, definitely check out the SPC outlook to see if there's any changes. Otherwise, that's how things look. Anyway, this is our upper level chart for the current time. Negative tilt trough through the central U.S., ridging on the west coast, but in spite of that, an active Pacific storm track coming right in from the west and right there into the Rockies. And that's bringing waves across the Great Basin area into the Rockies and producing snow. So we go into the weekend. Here's that trough moving for the deep south, producing that possibility of severe weather, closing off across Arkansas on Saturday and then opening up for Sunday. And you can see a succession of troughs on the west coast and out there in the Pacific. Now, since we don't have a positive P&A pattern, at least not a strong one, we don't really have a good path for bringing in Arctic air. So this is kind of a very stagnant weather pattern in the western Canadian region. This is more of a high index EPO pattern, typical of El Nino years, and we have not shifted into La Nina. We're kind of in that limbo between Pacific anomalies. So nothing really going on, but to me this kind of resembles a El Nino type setup. And we go into the rest of the week and just more of the same. Looks like we're dominated by flow off of the Pacific. Some northwesterly flow into the Great Lakes area in the northeastern U.S., keeping that part of the country cold, but conditions out west mild for the most part. The very end of the chart sequence next weekend, that really does not, well, actually it does show a little bit of a pattern shift. This is getting into a positive P&A pattern. We see the negative height anomalies starting to show up there in the Gulf of Mexico region, and very strong positive height anomalies in Western Canada. So this right here, a very deep northwesterly flow into the western U.S., that suggests a change to much colder conditions. Now, the GFS has been kind of teasing us with this pattern, so we're not going to worry about the specifics too much, but it is something to keep an eye on as we get into the second week of January. Let's take a look at the weather around the country, starting with the northeastern U.S. We started out with clear skies from Maine all the way down to West Virginia, but a few areas seeing trapped moisture that's producing fog and stratus. Around Montreal, they have smog advisories for today. But out to the west, clouds and weather. We can take a look at the water vapor imagery. That'll show that a little bit better. And we see a couple of cloud systems, one right there over Ohio, and a bigger one coming in from the west across Iowa and Missouri. So the very last frame, that's going to be it right there. One wave and two waves. What does that look like on the 500 millibar heights and vorticity? It's always interesting to compare the actual weather with the upper level dynamics. Well, this is going to be a few hours later compared to that satellite photo that you just saw, but there it is, one wave, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and another one in the Corn Belt region. And there's how it looks on the infrared imagery. Temperatures today range from the 20s in northern Maine to the 30s, southern New England, upstate New York, and 40s elsewhere. Winter weather advisory late tonight and Saturday morning for freezing rain across much of upstate New York, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, Connecticut, expecting just light accumulations of freezing rain. That includes Scranton, Allentown, Utica, Albany, Boston, most of inland Massachusetts and Connecticut, the northeastern corner of Rhode Island, and northern New Jersey. In the southeastern U.S., we do get into a convective weather regime with this first wave across Alabama this evening. Let's take a look at that visible imagery. And this will also show us the cold air damming in the Piedmont region. Temperatures in that region today running in the 40s. Then we increase to the 50s and 60s in Georgia and 70s and 80s in Florida. The storms at this time, not particularly strong, but they show discrete structures. And the actual base reflectivity, not particularly impressive. These here showing a little bit of mild rotation, but no warnings on any of these storms. In the southern plains, fair and mild. Some cirrus overspreading West Texas. Temperatures were up near 80 degrees in San Antonio today, 70s up to the DFW area, and even 70s in Louisiana. The northern plains warming up substantially. You can see a hint of westerly flow starting to invade that area. Highs today were in the 30s and 40s in North Dakota, a big change from single digits about a week ago. Temperatures are up to the 50s in South Dakota and Missouri. We do have some fog out there in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and dense fog advisories are posted through tonight, anywhere from northern Wisconsin into the Iron Mountain and Marquette area overnight, and further out to the west on the high plains. We do have a high wind warning overnight in the high country just west of Cheyenne. Then for Saturday, a high wind watch for most of southeastern Wyoming, including Cheyenne. Winds could be up to 50 to 60 miles an hour. In the central Rockies, winter storm warning continues overnight in the mountains of north central Colorado near Steamboat Springs. Appears to be mostly above 7,000 feet, looking for about 8 to 14 inches of snow there. Temperatures in the valley towns will be running about 30 to 35 today, falling off into the teens and 20s for tonight. Winter weather advisories elsewhere in Colorado for the remainder of tonight. You can see some snow coming down anywhere from Aspen down towards just north of Durango. I think the snow has stopped at Durango. And yeah, conditions are unsettled there. Some fog. Most of this area under winter weather advisories for 8 inches above 9,000 feet. Also winter storm warnings in the Wasatch Range of Utah. 8 to 16 inches of snow forecast. That runs through, I think, tomorrow. Yeah, that's going to be through tomorrow. Winter weather advisories further south towards Richfield. Looking at the southwestern U.S., lots of fair weather, but definitely some dynamics taking place. We can see mountain waves out across the Mojave Desert kind of anchored right there on the lee side of the Sierra Nevadas. And up to the north, evidence of fast flow through the Great Basin area. Mountain waves all through this area, given that herringbone type appearance. And cloud masses here and there where we have strong dynamics moving through the area. So that right there, that's going to be that upper level trough that will be moving into Texas overnight. And that will lead to that severe weather in the southeastern U.S. Wind advisories continue in the southern Antelope Valley. Wind advisories also in the coastal range near Santa Barbara through 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. West winds could be gusting to 50 miles an hour. We had high wind warnings earlier today around Reno, Carson City, Hawthorne. I think those have expired. They were expecting gusts of 70 miles an hour with 120 miles an hour on the ridges. So definitely some very strong upper level flow passing through that area. Further to the north, the northern Nevada deserts under winter weather advisories. Then as we go to the Pacific Northwest, I can't really go through all of these. A whole mess of winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings. Most of those are concentrated in eastern Idaho, out towards Yellowstone and Jackson. I think those snowfall amounts were somewhere around 5 to 10 inches. Additional winter storms further west around Haley into the Sawtooth Range, expiring this evening, 3 to 10 inches there. Winter weather advisories everywhere in eastern Idaho into the Bitterroots, 1 to 5 inches of snow. Then we pick up another cloud mass out to the west. The Cascades under a winter weather advisory north of Crater Lake, expiring this evening, 2 to 6 inches of snow right there. Then further north, winter weather advisory for the Washington Cascades, 6 to 12 inches above 3,500 feet. Some amounts up to 18 inches. All right, heading out into the Pacific, there's our next Pacific system lined up. We'll watch that come on shore on the forecast chart sequence. Going up to Alaska, some Arctic air infiltrating the north slope up to the Brooks Range. You can see that in the interior. Not super cold. Looking at single digits, about 5 in Fairbanks, but up to the north, minus 23 near Barrow. And that's associated with this cold front moving through northern Yukon and the Inuvik area. Other Arctic air found in the eastern Arctic around Baffin Island. However, the Canadian prairies, rather mild, and even getting some of that tropical air, highly modified tropical air, in the form of fog. That's because we're bringing warmer, moister air over that very cold terrain, and that produces condensation, saturation near the ground, and as a result, we get that fog and stratus. And then eastern Canada under the influence of this large anticyclone across New England up to Quebec City, and underneath that high-pressure area, getting that smog right there at Montreal. Don't think we have any viewers there. If we do, post a comment. And let's take a look at that forecast. This is GFS data from this morning's 12Z run with my own hand analysis. So this is the expert analysis. What's going to happen? Warm front pushing that area of showers northeast. It'll move quickly into the Appalachians and then into the northeast corridor for tomorrow morning. This old occlusion dies out in the Great Lakes area. You can see very little in the way of snow and a little bit of mixed precip around Ottawa up towards Sudbury. In Texas, here's our next weather system coming together. That'll move very quickly eastward. That's that area of severe weather we were talking about for tomorrow. There it is at 6 p.m., and things are also going downhill across the Great Basin area and the Siskiyous of California. Another Pacific weather system moving inland. And there it is, coming on shore early on Sunday. Sunday, with this deep southerly flow, that's going to be the warmest day of the week in Virginia, Pennsylvania, the northern Appalachians. Could see a lot of 60s through that area, 62 at Pittsburgh, 66 at Washington, D.C., and some areas in Virginia could reach 70. Anyway, that rain will be close at hand, moving across much of the northeast corridor for Sunday night. And meanwhile, this Pacific weather system sweeps inland, so extensive areas of snow and rain into the Great Basin area. Then we go into Monday. Cooler weather invades North Dakota once again, highs in the 20s. In Texas, widespread 80s all the way up to DFW. Looking at 82 at San Antonio, 78 at Houston. And continued very warm in the Northeast corridor. We're not really tapping very much air from Canada yet. So we're expecting to see about 60 at Washington, D.C., 57 at Boston and New York City. A significant cool down for the Great Basin area. Looking for a high of 38 at Salt Lake City. Boise drops from 49 to 40 for Monday. And you can see that system emerge out on the Great Plains, and we open up this northerly flow from Canada. And by Tuesday, it will be quite cold across the northern plains. Teens in North Dakota, 50s and 60s in Texas. And we'll just take you through the rest of the sequence. A drying trend around late in the week. A couple of Alberta clippers descend southward. Here's a reinforcing shot for Saturday. And yet another one lining up for Sunday. And of course, by the 2:40-hour point, we could be looking at much colder weather invading the northern plains, the high plains, and Idaho. So it's certainly possible in the extended that Cut Bank and Great Falls, which has escaped much of the cold air, they may start getting into the thick of things finally. Anyway, we'll just see how all that plays out with the model runs next week. It's much too early to tell at the current time. A special feature coming up for our Patreon supporters on Monday. I'm going to walk you through the preparation for this program, and that will cover the analysis process for those forecast graphics. So we'll talk a little bit about why the fronts are there and why I'm setting it up the way I am. So some good educational information. If you want to get signed up for that, there's our link. That goes to Patreon, and that helps support this channel and supports this project. So if you can do that, thank you very much. Hope you have a great rest of your weekend. We'll see you again on Monday for the supporters and on Wednesday for everybody else. Have a good one, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.